that and do my little welcome. So thank you, Tamika, for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Dee. Thank you so much. It's really great to see you on such a busy day, but um, these are the spaces where I like to be.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let me give you a proper introduction and just re-welcome folks that might be just joining us. Welcome to the Peace to the Polls Democracy Vigil, hosted by the Peace Alliance. The Peace Alliance's mission is to educate, advocate, and mobilize people into action to transform systems and public policy toward a culture of peace. And today, our vigil is designed to be a place of hope and sustenance while we all await the election results and celebrate participation in our democracy. Many of you all, we've talked throughout the day that some of you voted today. I voted today because my state doesn't offer early voting. So I voted first thing this morning, but that is on the ballot this year to have Connecticut start doing early voting. So today's vigil is focused on three themes: depolarizing dialogues, which we've talked about here and there throughout the day, the work that continues no matter who wins, no matter what the results of today are, what's next, and then personal peace practices. And Yelena just led us in a beautiful one. So thank you, Yelena. So let me get to introducing our next guest. She is very special to me. She's a dear friend of mine. Her name is Tamika Gadsden, and she is from Charleston, South Carolina. She's an organizer and content creator, media entrepreneur. She describes herself as the daughter of Jim Crow refugees and has built a significant digital presence as an activist, building her organization, Charleston Activist Network Media, LLC, which is an outgrowth of the work that she led as the South Carolina leader of the state's Women's March organization. And I got the great privilege of supporting her in developing that Women's March. How many years ago was that now?
Was that 2018?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it feels so far away. Mika hosts a daily live stream show on Twitch called Mic'd Up. And it's how I start my day, Monday through Friday, starts at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And one of the reasons that I asked her to join us today is that she is running for mayor of Charleston, South Carolina in 2023. She has thrown her hat in the ring. And I consider her a very dear friend and wanted to have her voice come into the space tonight. So welcome, Mika.
Thank you so much. That was a great intro. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So, tonight is really loose. It's, I'm a little nervous. I'm always watching you interview other people, and now I have to interview you. But you have decided, after what I can only imagine is a lot of thought and careful consideration, have decided to throw your hat in the ring for mayor of Charleston. And I'm just really curious about the journey that you went on to make that decision, because I can't imagine it was a light one for you, and just want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for even asking that question, because like many other people, but specifically women, the thought of running for office is a daunting one. I think for those who are taking it seriously, for those who are committed to community, you don't take even the notion of running for any elected office lightly. And being a Black woman, an unambiguously Black woman here in the South, in Charleston, a city that has refused, I won't ever say grappled or struggles with, that implies an effort. I really do think that this city culturally, the dominant culture, has refused to really confront much of its past, much of its history. And in that, that is what I also have to keep in mind when deciding or making decisions like running for office. So it's something that people have asked me for years. Dee, you mentioned, you were a huge co-leader with my Women's March rally for electoral justice in honor of Septima Clark, a local Charleston amazing legend. You are part of that effort. And ever since then, folks have asked me, well, when you're going to run? Cousins have asked me, A lot of people who just really are addicted to Black women's labor have asked me, and some of that is an innocent and understandable reaction when you see a Stacey Abrams, or here in South Carolina when you see a Gilda Cobb Hunter, when you see these progressive, amazing voices emerge. People look to you and well, you're progressive, you're loud. How about we get at it? But it comes with a lot, and and I'm going to continue to reference that, Dee and I are friends. So Dee has been literally at the front. She's been at the sidelines rather of a lot of what I had to contend with here culturally, politically, and as an organizer. And so Dee, you saw firsthand, the oppressive forces that come out the woodwork once you assert yourself in the ways that I have in this body and this packaging. So after certain nudges, and after just being totally just frustrated with the failures of leadership, Charleston back in 2017 was the #1 gentrifying city in America. That's a policy failure. Right now we're contending with unfettered growth and rent rates, which is national, but rent rates have skyrocketed. But in a place like Charleston, it has this very, very unique little flavor to it that is that's predicated on, we have a lot of developers on city council and as a mayor. We had 40 years of Mayor Riley. He's a developer. His shop is still up on Broad Street. So those were the things that motivated me to run finally, was just seeing the policy failures, and also seeing very little Black women ascend to prominent positions of leadership here in Charleston.
Yeah, I mean, you've really helped open my eyes to just the nuance of all of that, and I mentioned earlier on this evening or earlier today, been on for a long time, so I don't know what time it is, when I moved up to the Northeast. I'm no longer in Charleston. I was there for over 20 years. And when I tell people up here that I moved from Charleston, the first thing they say is, "Oh my God, it's so nice there." And my answer is always, "Oh, they got a nice publicist." It's a nice place to visit, but maybe not so nice to live there, especially for people that don't look like me. And you have really helped, frame my understanding of how challenging it can be when you have a developer or a strong development presence in places of power, in places of leadership. And it's great for the tourists. It looks all shiny and all of those things, but behind the scenes can be super problematic. And I would love to hear you speak to, you've talked about yourself as being the daughter of Jim Crow refugees. Your last name is Gadsden, which, for those that don't know a lot about Charleston, Gadsden it's one of them names, right? And so I'd love to hear you speak to that. What are you excited about in terms of running for mayor? I would imagine you've got some hopeful visions for the city. Of course, they're framed by all the other stuff. So I just wanted to hear you speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. And if anyone wants more information, votemika.com is where you can find some more of my policy priorities. But yeah, no, I'm the daughter of Jim Crow refugees. And I refer to myself that way because, of course, it's true. My mother and my father are both from what's technically called or considered the Gullah Geechee corridor. So my mother's a native to far eastern North Carolina. My dad is a native of the Charleston County area, but specifically Wadmalaw Island. And so, that being raised by parents who fled the South. I'm a New Jersey native. So, yeah, she's in Charleston. I'm a New Jersey native. And so my mother and my father met each other. And they found community with a number of folks who left the South to create new lives and find better opportunities, economic opportunities in the Northeast. And they got there because family brought them up there. My father was brought there by his sister. My mother brought her sisters up from North Carolina, and that's typically how folks got up there toward the tail end of the Great Migration. It's their individual lived experiences. I heard something this morning on the Daily podcast. They were talking to voters in Wisconsin, or a voter in Wisconsin, about all the stuff that's dominating the headlines right now in mainstream media. But one thing I heard toward the end of the podcast was that something to the fact of America doesn't have the collective imagination to understand what essentially what a fascist future looks like. And I'm like, I'm the daughter of Jim Crow refugees. This literal apartheid, that literally is fascism. There are a lot of people who are still alive today, who can speak to that. My dad was born 1939. My mom was born 1949 at home because they're black bodies. And I don't like to refer to them as bodies, but their black bodies were prohibited from being born in area hospitals. And so there are people who can imagine what it's like to not have your vote count, to live in a community where you're not considered a citizen because you have been othered by the structural forces, by the vestiges of, yes, slavery, but also the vestiges of apartheid. So that very literally informs my run for office. And their stories, I just don't take it for granted. They've never been explicit. I think movies and television and media can give you these like caricatures of the Black experience. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a, let's sit down at the table, Mika, let me tell you about it wasn't that. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but it wasn't that. It was just over my lifetime, they've just reminded me of what I could and could not do in my body. Mm-hmm. And I know that was informed by what things they saw. My mom talks about the first time her mom was able to vote and going to vote with her ma, and she calls her ma, and then going into a bathroom that was desegregated, that was formerly white only, and going in there and being kind of underwhelmed, like what why couldn't we use this, like what's going my dad,
I thought it would have gold plated whatevers or something.
Yeah, my mom has these memories, and it's stories like that, D. It's stories like that really did like teach me. I'm like, okay, so life was a little different. Life was a lot different. And it really has informed my politics. And I'll say this, I know I'm long-winded, y'all, but I'll say this too, in choosing to run for mayor, the last name you mentioned, I've had to really sit with what it means. So one thing Black folk don't like for you to do if you represent their communities is embarrass them. Don't go out there and act a fool. And I won't name a candidate, but we're seeing a very prominent Black male candidate out here who doesn't really represent, forget politics, basic values, and is, to me, looks like a caricature of what Black folk should look like in the political realm. And so having the last name Gadsden, being the great granddaughter of Enoch, the granddaughter of July Gadsden, these are two Gadsden men, patriarchs, from Edisto and Wadmalaw. I don't take that lightly. And so I plan to run a very, very bold and courageous campaign that I have to speak to people who feel deeply about the issues like I do, and maybe some that don't. Like, I'm interested and excited to meet people where they are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you have, in listening to you talk about running for mayor and the choice to run for mayor, I know you have a vision of what you know that Charleston could be in terms of it being better. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting. You and I have talked about this a little bit, and I know you talk about it on your stream a lot about the roadblocks that the establishment puts up to progress, real progress, progress for everybody, is so it really ends up excuse my French, but it kind of bites them in their own butt. I mean, it's like there's so much that could be expanded in Charleston as a place to be and a destination. I mean, it's already Condé Nast, whatever, number one destination to visit. But what about making it the number one place to live? And if you could speak a little bit to the difference between those two things, if that resonates with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put you down as a consultant because I'm definitely taking that line. No, it very much is that, and I think that informs the way people engage with their local politics. Yeah. So one thing I do with Mic'd Up on Twitch, what I try to do in across my digital platforms is I live stream city council meetings. I try to dispense information, like take what's in the news, the local news here, pay close attention to local reporters, distill that information and present it, of course, from my perspective, and disseminated information to inform the public. I find that to be critically important. I do think we live in a media desert here. In Charleston, I think the mainstream media, specifically print media, I think television news is okay. And I think some are better than others. Some outlets are better than others, but print media in this state, in this region, is woefully just incomplete, or just not what it needs to be, because it centers the moneyed, the wealthy, right? And also it centers the narrative of, oh, come buy a plantation, in our real estate section, come buy this old plantation. We're not going to call it a plantation. We're going to call it a garden. We're going to call it an estate. We're not going to call the former, the quarters where the enslaved Africans live. We're not going to call them, slave quarters. We're going to call them, carriage houses and all these other euphemisms and whatnot. And so Charleston has really, and the media has helped this, has really concocted this image of, antebellum, Disneyland. And so, and so people come here. I think a lot of the residents who live here 365 also, I think that affects the way they engage, because they're seen as just a means to an end. They're either part of the workforce, they're either paying taxes to help, buoy, the city and these systems, but far too often they're never really presented with government representation that works for them. Like we work so hard here, whether you work in tech or whether you work, whether you're part of the working class who works to help, hospitality and food and bev, you are just really being mined for your labor, but not really asked to really participate in your democracy. And I'm hoping to correct that. I hope that my campaign will be a cultural reset.
Awesome. Well, this, today's event is nationally, we've been inviting people from all across the country to come together and be in this space together, because we know about the divisiveness of partisanship, and with every state, running seemingly their own election, even when it's a national effort. We wanted to create a space where people could come together and feel connected to each other. And I'm curious if you could speak just a little bit to, I know you're very focused on Charleston, and rightly so. That's where you live, and it's where you're running for mayor in 2023 as a reset to those who are just joining us. But what do you think? I mean, what do you think? Do you think? I guess I should phrase it. Do you think Charleston has the opportunity to speak to the greater issues of our nation when it comes to atonement around, our original sins? And, I often, refer to Charleston as this portal, because so much went down in that. Not only did, the first shot of the Civil War, but also, over 40%, and that's probably a low number of the kidnapped Africans that were brought to our shores to be enslaved came through that port, ironically enough, called Gadsden's Wharf. And so speak, if that resonates with you, speak a little bit to how Charleston kind of, mirrors or is a microcosm of the greater, issues that we've got in our country right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what happened and transpired in Charleston, whether it is during the boom of the plantation economy that you just alluded to, where, there was one point, New Orleans, I believe, Louisiana was, hate to say it like a competition, but they really did really well at enslavement, to put it, for lack of a better way of putting it. But Charleston definitely, did their part with 40%, over 40% coming in through the Gadsden Wharf and various wharfs around what's called the peninsula or downtown. I think that unique history. So where I was going to go with that was so that gistory, being first to secede, right? Beginning of the Civil War, first shots of the Civil War, Fort Sumter, all of these, and also too, where our modern day policing had emerged from slave patrols, which originated in the Carolina colonies. The very brutal form of capitalism that we all know today, well, that's an outgrowth of the plantation capitalism that emerged, right? That literally came through a Black woman's body, by way of her giving birth and chattel slavery and whatnot. So there's a lot that Charleston specifically was a pioneer in. And I think a lot of times the white guilt, or whatever you want to call it, the white guilt, the white supremacy, the lack of political will, there are a number of reasons why the dominant culture, the dominant class will not confront its past. There's a number of reasons, right? And I don't need to go into those specifically right now. But I think that their refusal to do so is a missed opportunity. If you want to look at it as just as something maybe more culturally, I think we missed an opportunity. We saw the year of return a few years ago, where hordes and hordes of Black folk went back to the continent of Africa to retrace, their ancestors' roots and maybe make connection to a past that had been erased. I think it was a missed opportunity that Charleston hasn't done that, hasn't invited back people like my mom and my dad who did not come back home to retire. These Jim Crow refugees and whatnot who fled lynchings and Jim Crow oppression and never came back because the South caused so much harm and represented so much violence. I think Charleston doesn't even have to stay with the pure, doesn't have to remain, the lessons don't have to remain purely painful. It's a lot to celebrate and lift up, beyond food, beyond artisan crafts. Like, there's so much to lift up in terms of journalistic brilliance. There are Black historical newspapers. Why not lift up that history? What about the history of rebellion? Honor Black women's labor and their ingenuity. There's so much there, not just even the painful pieces, which are important, which should be told, but there's so much to celebrate, and their refusal to confront the past also, it creates that missed opportunity, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think we see that on a national, kind of reflected on a national level. What's happening in Charleston and that refusal, is happening nationwide, and our lack of awareness around that, and to take it back to where we are today with regard to it being election day. And we've heard so much in the news about this is, democracy is on the ballot, and then there are many, and you're one of them, and I've heard it from other folks that have said democracy's been on the ballot, especially for Black, brown, and indigenous people, every single election. So yeah, those of us who belong to the dominant culture, I believe, we're a little slow on the uptake with regard to how this stuff has been impacting people that don't look like us for a lot longer than we are just figuring it out. But we'll take it. If you're going to be aware now, then let's do something about it. And yeah, I think Charleston could the rest of the country could take a cue, but Charleston could lead the way if they really wanted to. So So I just want to open up. Let's see, it's 6:19. I definitely want to open it up if anyone in the Zoom room has got questions for you about your campaign. We probably could talk for hours and hours, and I really appreciate you being with us for this length of time. And because I know you're going to be going and live streaming the election results after you leave here on Twitch. That I don't invite anyone to leave our room, but wish you could be in two places at once.
Yes.
But yeah, just parting thoughts. I mean, what do you maybe in two things? What are you excited about with your run? And what do you maybe have a little apprehension about? You've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but I just, in a nutshell, what are you excited about?
I'm excited so basically I because I don't have the institutional support, it's a nonpartisan race, but the incumbent has never stopped really fundraising since he was elected and won re-election in the last term. And so not just him, but there's at least two other developers. So there's three developers and one establishment, political establishment member running, and they just come with a lot of money. Like they have a lot of money already. It came out the gate with six figures. And so what I'm excited about, even though that's daunting and gave me tons of angst when that disclosed. I'm
Yeah.
excited about, people vote, dollars don't vote. And I'm excited about leveraging people power in a way that the city has never seen.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm trying not to center my anxieties. I think y'all all can imagine the things that'll come out the woodwork. And I'm dealing with those. Me and my family are dealing with that. And I'm taking proper precautions when it comes to security, safety, everything. But I'm mostly excited about galvanizing the people who have not been spoken to. I'm talking about working class folk in food and bev. I'm talking about people who work in hospitality, people who don't speak English as a first language. I'm talking about Gullah Geechee folk like me. I'm talking about the people with, who have ADA concerns, and, voting is not, participating in their democracy is not accessible. I'm excited about creating a campaign that keeps everyone in mind, and not because it signals virtue, but because those are the people I've been listening to for the past, 7 years here as an organizer. And I'm really excited to really platform their voices and their concerns, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it proves it's the only reason that I wish I was still living down there. So I've already volunteered to be a faraway consultant to help get out the vote, because I know it's going to be an amazing effort, and you've already rallied around you some incredible people that are going to be able to just lift you up and really help you travel that trail all the way to the end of it. So I wanted to open it up to the room, and see. I thought I saw DJ that you had your hand raised, but maybe you put it down. But I wanted to open it up to anybody. Does anyone got any questions for Tamika about her run, or anything that you might have heard that resonated with you? Just feel free to hit your raise your hand thing in the reactions, and I will definitely call on you. So you're not running, you're running in 2023. So I know that you've been reminding people of that. With election day approaching, people were thinking you were running this year.
Yeah.
It's amazing how long it takes to mount a campaign. It's a long time.
Yeah, no, especially again when you have competition that's already raised six figures, and will definitely probably the especially the incumbent will probably raise $1 million. It's daunting, but again, we've seen in the either the 2020 election cycle, we've seen what money does and doesn't do. And again, dollars do not vote, people do. Also too, we were seeing it now, all these narratives around low voter turnout and who's not coming and who is. Well, what are we giving people to vote for? Right. You've got an energized faction of folk who are coming out to vote against things, to hurt and take away things from people. But what if people, I believe an incentive is people need an incentive. And so I'm really looking forward to giving people something to vote for. And I don't think money's going to be the equalizer that I don't think that's going to be the thing that puts people over the top, especially in a place like Charleston where names matter, connection to community matters. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to really to focus on my campaign, but also make really important distinctions as to who else is vying for this seat, and maybe and even why they may be running. I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's daunting. And if I wasn't afraid, I see DJ. I'll stop talking, because DJ, I'll keep talking.
All right. Yeah, DJ, you got a question for Tamika.
Well, I just want to say that it has been wonderful to meet you and hear you. And I think you're amazing. And I'd like to invite you to be part of our Peace Builders series, where we can interview you and promote you as a peace builder. You're remarkable, and I love you for everything that you're doing. And thank you so much for doing it.
Oh, well, I really appreciate that. No, seriously. I love recognition. That's like my currency. So thank you so much. And I definitely, I never consider myself a peace builder, because I'm a gadfly and social irritant, but that's not antithetical to peace, right? And I think I talk about that often. Like, we are afraid of conflict, and conflict does not purely mean being adversarial. It can be generative. It can be a whole bunch of things. And I think you can have good conflict in a society and also honor and value peace. And let me tell you something, I definitely honor peace in my personal life. But definitely would love to be part of that broader message of how important it is, especially in these times right now. We need peace more than anything right now. Even the people who we most vehemently disagree with, they need peace. They need something. And I'm not for soothing folk, but I am for, like, letting them know that there are other ways to engage with your democracy that don't have to look like what it's looked like for the past 6 years at the very least.
Right.
We need a healing in this country for sure.
Well, and you taught me that concept of generative conflict, and we've talked a little bit about that here in different spaces today throughout that. Peace is an action. It's a verb. It needs to be intentional. We need to have infrastructure. That's why the Peace Alliance supports an establishment of a cabinet level Department of Peace Building. And I know some people go, oh God, not another governmental department, but it would give us the infrastructure to be intentional about that peace building and infusing that in all other in all areas. I really think we have to be intentional about that. And sometimes conflict is a part of that, and that's okay. We can't be afraid of that. And you, just in closing tonight, you have inspired me as a friend, but also as that person who is not afraid to be the gadfly, is not afraid. Tamika and I stayed up like all night long waiting for the Calhoun monument to come down, and it's just. That's the kind of stuff that we have to just keep being willing to do, put ourselves out there. And you are doing it with a mayoral run in Charleston, South Carolina. So votemika.com. We dropped it in the chat. You can click on that link and open it in your browser and go back and look at it. Please support what Tamika's doing, running for mayor. It's going to be an interesting journey to watch you, my friend, walk through this in the next year. And I'm just so grateful that you were able to come and carve out some of your day with us today. So thank you very much.
No better place to be, especially tonight as we watch the results. Y'all, please guard your peace tonight. Please guard your peace. Whatever happens, it's going to happen. We're going to get through it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And say hi everybody at Twitch for me, since I won't be with you tonight.
I'm taking a couple with me. I see them right there.
I know you are. Bye, Twitch. Bye, Cam Fam. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Bye-bye.